because how it's being portrayed is, these Muslims are homophobic and they don't want to teach their kids about the existence of, kids with two mums or two dads or whatever.
What we're saying is that, we can live in a respectful and tolerant manner with, despite having differences, despite having moral differences. Let us live our lives according to our morals, and the LGBT members can live their lives according to their morals. Do not we will not impose our morals on you. You do not impose your morals on us. That's quite simply, what it is. But in terms of, I know there has been a lot of misinformation in the media, but I don't think that we should dwell on that too much. Look, every community in Britain that shares our morals, it's a concern for them. And the way we have tackled it is you will find that you take Shakir, for example, Fatima and Maryam. These are young parents, and they're articulate. They've been born and raised here in Britain. They've had all their education here, and it's these mums and dads that are the ones that will actually make a difference. They're the ones.
They're the extremists.
Well, okay, in quotation marks, yeah. We are saying, we're asking, don't force your morals on us. Yeah. That's extremism. That's totalitarian attitude, and it's not us who are forcing anything on anybody else.
Assalamu alaikum, dear viewers. This is your host Salman Butt, and welcome to this special Unscripted Podcast by Islam 21C. We've seen that Muslim parents in Birmingham have been centre of another recent media controversy in, I think, what was the name of the area? Parkville
School and Anderson Park School.
In terms of LGBT teaching of kids, right? So we've got two people who've been at the centre of this kind of controversy, so to speak. And let's just start with introduction. So
my name's Amir Ahmed. I've been campaigning at Parkfield School, which is where it all became national news. They're under in mediations now at the moment, and but at Anderson Park School, which is also in Birmingham, their protests are continuing. Okay. So yeah, I've been a campaigner there. I'm also my kids go to one of the schools nearby.
Okay, excellent, exactly. And Maulana Abdullah Bham.
Yeah, that's right, Maulana Abdullah Bham. And it's awkward saying that title in front of your name, really, because it's awkward. But basically, we're from West Yorkshire, Batley, Dewsbury region. Okay. It's kind of like Batley, Dewsbury, Huddersfield, Wakefield, and Bradford. So these are the major towns around us, or cities. And kind of like got involved with looking and following the petition that came around on people's WhatsApp groups to grant parents rights to opt out from this new stream of teaching that they were about to introduce. So that was some months ago. Also got involved in the consultation when it first came out and responded.
On RSE?
On RSE, yeah.
Relationship and sexual education.
So that's my own personal little bit that I do. When you just sat around looking through your WhatsApp messages. And as things developed, the horror of what was about to come into the community, into the midst of our communities, became more and more apparent. So, we went to a meeting of the community, and then from there we became a group, a WhatsApp group, and then there was a huge interest from the public, parents. So the group quickly became 200 people, 250 people, and then we had to open up another group. And it was really a solution-finding chat room. Yeah. How can we, what can we do to tackle this issue? Yeah. That's, is it going to become law? Is there anything else that we can do? So it was in and around that. And right now we're kind of like bringing together a parent pack. Okay. And that's been a slow development because there's possibly out of the 3.3 million, 3.5 million, there's probably 2 million of those are kids at school. I wouldn't be surprised. So
3 million Muslims.
Out of 3.5 million Muslims in the UK, probably 2 million of those will be children. So how do we reach the parentage of these children? How can we protect them? How does the issue get out there? And so that's what we've been involved in. And more recently, we met through Birmingham, Amir and I. There would have been an opportunity to move earlier, but it wasn't muqaddar. And alhamdulillah, there's been a lot of progress ever since we've met, actually.
Alhamdulillah. So, I mean, Birmingham in particular has been the centre of a lot of media hysteria the last few days. So, do you want to give a bit of a background on what that's about? Yeah. Because it's also been subject to a lot of kind of very, very one-sided media reporting, painting the Muslim parents as just some kind of tiny radical element who've, these WhatsApp groups you talk about, they've been portrayed as some kind of sinister plot to, do something malicious. So this is your chance to set the record straight. What is the actual issue here?
Yeah, well, the actual issue, quite simply, the core issue for the parents is that they don't wish their children's morality to be changed over issues such as LGBT lifestyles. The schools, it seems, have very surreptitiously been teaching LGBT values over many years. In Parkfield, we found that Andrew Moffat was running the No Outsiders program, and using phrases such as we're celebrating diversity and difference and we're teaching equality, but in effect they were basically proselytizing homosexuality to children starting from the age of 4. And this only became apparent widely to the parent community at Parkfield once mums like, in fact, Fatima went to the papers earlier this year. Fatima is a young mum at Parkfield School, and also Maryam as well, another young mum at Parkfield School. Maryam started a petition, and then she called upon me to help, and Fatima then subsequently went to the newspapers, and this was after they had repeatedly tried to explain to the school that, look, this is against our moral values, and we simply don't want you teaching our children that it's okay to be gay. That is proselytizing our children. You're, over the period of their primary schooling, you're changing the children's view, you're influencing it for them to believe that this is normal, it's acceptable, and that's just not right.
Is this something specific to Parkview, or?
What we've discovered, in fact, is that it's quite widespread. There were 4 schools in the Lee Trust who were also implementing No Outsiders. Nansen School, where my son goes, was implementing No Outsiders. But these schools withdrew the program. I mean, the Lee Trust suspended the program until they consult parents after Ramadan. And they were very sensible about it. But at Parkfield, Andrew Moffat and Hazel Pulley, the chief executive officer for the academy, simply dug their heels and treated the parents with contempt, quite honestly. They had done petitions. They repeatedly asked the school not to teach these values. And what the school should have started doing is coming to start discussing it with the parents, see what their concerns were, how they can do things differently, how they can perhaps accommodate the parents. But I suppose it was difficult for them to do that because they had been lying. Well, effectively, they had been dishonest and deceitful with the parents for a long period of time.
So the picture that's being painted in the mainstream media is that all schools are doing this, and there's just a small group of parents that are making a fuss in 1 or 2 schools. So what you're saying is, it sounds like you're saying is, the rest of the schools, at least in your area, they listen to parents' issues and they said, okay, let's consult. But it's the 2 schools that didn't, agree to consult with parents that protests are happening at, right?
Well, I think there are a lot of schools where this is being taught. Some schools have been sensible and decided, look, I think all schools were aware that this is there's about 240,000 Muslims in Birmingham. There's over 60,000 Muslim children in Birmingham. There's over 70 schools that are majority Muslim, that have a pupil population that's majority Muslim. They very well know that these are unacceptable values to this community, but they still, I think, because of government regulations and government policy, and Ofsted in particular, were pushing schools to teach this anyway. But those schools that were sensible, they've decided that actually, look, we're going to pull back from this. And so it's not a question that it's just a few parents. Unfortunately, in our community, we are ill-represented politically. Parents are not very vocal. They're very passive. In fact, they're very respectful and tolerant generally. In fact, they live a sort of stoic life, if you like, in that they will suffer a lot of intolerance quietly. So it's not. There may be a small number of people who are speaking out, but actually, I know for a fact, for example, at Anderton Park, this Monday, because the school was not listening to the parents, last week we campaigned for parents to withdraw their children for one day from the school, and this Monday, 600 children didn't go to school. That's almost 80% of the school population pupils did not go. But when at our protests, you'll find that there are much fewer parents participating in the protests, because parents perhaps don't like to do that sort of thing.
They want to rock the boat.
Well, it's not just rock the boat. There are a lot of mums who don't want to show their faces to the cameras. They're very conservative individuals. They don't want to be seen in public in that manner. But morally, almost 100% of the parents are with us. This is why we got a huge withdrawal from the school.
I mean, on the media broadcasts and news programs, they didn't mention anything near 600. They just said a few kids weren't brought to school.
Yeah, I mean,
I think they admitted to about half the children being away. But I think Brother Shakil and Amir stood outside the school early that morning and counted the children that went in, and they only managed to count about 130. So there again, there's media deceit, but the reporter did say that even 300 is a lot of parents making their case that they don't want this teaching in the school. Now, I'll just interject now that I am talking, because I didn't want to disturb Brother Amir. But what it is from our point of view, the rest of us in the country, for example, we had it that this is going to be rolled out in September of 2020. So basically, we didn't know what was happening in Birmingham. We're just looking at it from our point of view. It's just recently been passed by 550 MPs. It's going to go to the House of Lords. They may approve it, they may disapprove it. Everybody write to this guy, write to that guy, email this guy, email that guy.
But did that include the content of what was being taught? It's just the fact that there's relationship education.
So what it is the point is, it's been, what came as a shock to the rest of the country is that it's been rolled out in Birmingham from a few years ago. After the Trojan horse, I wouldn't be surprised that's when it began. So what they're selling us in the media is RSE is coming to you in September 2020. And, this is a consultation. They're going to vote on it. Okay, it's been passed. So you've still got... So then they said, right, some of this material will get rolled out from any time now, basically, because it's got passed. So we're like, okay, what do we need to do? What do we need to do? Well, we had no solutions, because it's become, it's statutory, it's in the law, mandatory, they're going to teach this. So in the first instance, we thought, right, what do we do? So some activists came together and we printed some withdrawal letters. At that point in time, we didn't know about anything was going to kick off in Birmingham. So we printed some withdrawal letters, and I think there was just some talk, and we handed them out to the masajid and the madaris to say, well, send these out in the communities, and hopefully... these are our religious institutes. You'll hand them out to the child. In that letter, there was sufficient information to say that you can withdraw. It's your legal right to withdraw up till September 2020. So that was the approach we took. And when you're an activist, you kind of tend to think that everybody knows about what's going on.
Yeah.
It's only later on when you ask a few people and interact with the population, oh, we don't know what's going on, what are you asking us to withdraw from?
Yeah.
Oh, this bulldozer's coming our way and it's going to kind of like crush our kids under the LGBT banner. Where? Who says? So there's so much trust that's put into schools traditionally by our parentage and ourselves as well. And, we traditionally have respect institutes and we have a view that this country, as we were discussing in the car, has an interest in child safety and well-being. So, for example, if there's an incident at the mosque and a parent complains, the city council will be around with social services, who smacked who or who shouted at who or who's nipped who. So you can't touch your children, parents can't touch their children, nobody can touch their children. You can't traumatise them. There's the Royal Society for the Protection of Children. So we're looking at these institutes and we feel that, if there's a place in the world where a child's going to be particularly safe, it's going to be in the UK. And this is kind of like ingrained in our mentality. And then, all of a sudden, these MPs have endorsed LGBT ideology to be introduced to children from the age of 5. So that's a bit of a shock. It's going to come into the community in 2020. So we can do something in the meantime and tell the parents about it and we'll get the withdrawal letters in. And then streamed in the news of Parkfield and Andrew Moffat.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, how did that start? That's RSE, isn't it? No, it's a different programme.
Yeah.
So they catch us with the jargon. There's RE, which used to be religious education. Now it's relationship education. There's RSE, that's relationship and sex education. And one of the brothers has just enlightened me. It is currently SRE, sex and relationship education. So they bombard us with jargon, so we feel all disorientated and confused. And the brother just pointed out that, look, it's R because the emphasis is on relationship, and what that means is the emphasis is on the LGBT community. So it's on transgenderism. If you get to the end of that word, it's transgenderism. So all of this information started flowing in, and we're still learning, into the WhatsApp groups. And, when you're in a WhatsApp group, kind of like you retire at the end of the day, then you look in your WhatsApp group, and you're bombarded with all of this. Oh my God, this is coming our way. Is there anything we can do about it? And then we started feeding into the Birmingham material. And I kept saying, so all that was happening in the awareness programs was tell parents to do better tarbiyah of their children. Well, that's not an answer. Or the other solution that I fell into myself was homeschool the child. Well, that's not a solution for the masses. You've got 750 children at Anderton. How many are going to do homeschooling? So then we came up with a motto, and that is reclaim your child via withdrawal, basically. Let us say don't teach any of this material. Reclaim your child, reclaim your school. These schools are in the midst of our communities. They don't belong to Andrew Moffat and they don't belong to Sarah Hewitt. They belong to the parentage in that community. And we have a right under the Act of 2010, Equalities Act. So that's an employment act that's somehow been conflated to kind of like children getting LGBT education. So, we have a right under there. We have a right to bring our child up as a Muslim child or a Sikh child or in the faith of its parentage. So what about all of that? Because this is LGBT ideology. And so we really got... And when the material started rolling in, well, Amir, this material is absolutely awful from the age of 5, learning about genitalia, names of parts, right down to things that we wouldn't even like to mention on Islamic program. What is the penis? What is the clitoris? What is the vagina? I think some communities have had the fortune of people like Brother Yusuf Patel. Yusuf Patel going around giving talks, and then there's Aziz, and then there was Dr. Kate. And then, you might want to expand the discussion about Dr. Kate, Yeah, she's been under attack as well, right? Yeah, I mean, she got witch hunted down, professional psychologist, they've threatened or are threatening to remove her from her position and her work. I think one of the things that's animated so much vitriol against the Muslims of Birmingham, the parents, is that some people essentially at their core are terrified because of centuries of stereotypes they've absorbed. They're terrified of a Muslim community standing up and asserting its own voice, asserting its own values, its own identity, because they've absorbed for hundreds of years
these Orientalist stereotypes that the Muslims are out to get you. They are infidel. The infidels were the Muslims. The original infidels. The word was applied to Muslims, and you go through so many different iterations of that. The Moors, the Moriscos, the Muslimans of India, Indian subcontinent, the British Raj, up to today's the image of the radical, the extremist Islamist. Who's trying to take over your country and get rid of your superior kind of Western values and that kind of stuff. So I think that is partly what's animating a lot of the negative framing.
Yes,
even when Newsnight did a piece on you, I mean, there's so much goes into the framing of a piece that people don't even realize, such as, they had you against a very ominous backdrop of, somebody's asking you simple questions, why are you protesting, and then put a mic in front of you. But, they've got a really dark and gloomy backdrop, really scary kind of Bond villain music playing in the background.
Really? Actually, I didn't notice that. Okay.
Yeah, these are things you pick up on, because I'm careful for Islam 21C. I don't do it for others, but I'm careful to try and not, unconsciously propagate some of these stereotypes and myths, right? So I can. It's easier to pick up, right? So that whole piece, for example, was framed in a way of the Muslim kind of other trying to take over a peaceful school or a peaceful society, right? But in order to move forward now, right, because Muslims, inshallah, aren't going anywhere. If Allah wills, they're going. It's part and parcel.
We're British. Yeah.
Islam and Muslims are part and parcel of the fabric of the UK.
Yeah.
Now, how do you get along with somebody else from a different background, a different set of views and beliefs? The problem is, alhamdulillah, we have a very long established tradition of understanding differences of opinion.
Yeah.
Right? We might not, follow it much.
It's a fair point.
But we have, at the core of it, we have lakum dinukum liya din. Even from the earliest days of Islam, you had different faiths and even
you take
complete opposites living alongside each other.
You take Umar radiallahu anhu's entrance into Jerusalem.
Yeah.
He said this is a city that is a Christian city, it's a Muslim city, and he asked, where are the Jews? This is a Jewish city as well. And he brought the Jews back into Jerusalem.
Likewise, when Salahuddin conquered it after the Crusades, that was the other time the Jews were allowed to return.
Right.
After into Jerusalem, for example. But the thing is with
sorry, I mean, there is an intellectual bias, and it has been going on for a very long time in the West. Chomsky, if you've listened to him at all, he makes that very clear. This has been going on since the Crusades.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And then in my lifetime, all I remember is Islam being demonized and being associated with terrorism, and this
even
is
before 9/11. Some people are too young to.
Even before, when I was a young man, one thing I remember very vividly is the Iranian Revolution, right? And then Libya was always always in the news. In Palestine has always been in the news, right? And then you had the Afghan war. That was about the only time when the Russians invaded Afghanistan that the West
Mujahideen with the good guys.
That's right. They were referring to them as Mujahideen. Now they call them Taliban, right? Yeah. And terrorists.
Even Rambo fought with them.
Rambo fought with them. That's right. Yeah. So this has been going on for decades, to be honest. And there is a clear bias, and that whole sort of association with Islam and terrorism has skewed public debate and the narrative. And that's what we're fighting against here. But in our campaign here, anyway, look, I experienced Trojan horse a couple of years ago, and I was very dismayed that there was a lot of injustice done to the community there in Birmingham. But I was dismayed.
Later proven to be a hoax.
Yes, it was. They were completely false allegations, and in fact, I knew at the time they were false allegations. And to some extent, that is why, I was not really concerned about it, because I knew I just considered them as false newspaper headlines. But what I was dismayed about in particular, actually, was that when I campaigned at the school gate. This was quite late in the issue. When I campaigned at the school gate, I found parents saying, parents feeling that they didn't belong to this country, that they didn't have rights here, that they were a pariah in their community in Birmingham, and they would say things like, "Oh, this is a Christian country. You have to do what they say," which is directly against British law. When public schools first started around the Second World War, the Education Act 1944 says very clearly that pupils are to be educated in accordance with their parents' wishes, right? And this is enshrined in British law and in primary legislation.
That's an important distinction to make, because you're being spun as the people trying to argue against something happening, whereas you're arguing for the rights you already have to be recognised.
That's right. This head teacher at Anderston Park School, Sarah Hewitt Clarkson, she was interviewed yesterday, I think on Monday, right, by a gay reporter, and she's telling the reporter that, look, these parents, they can't dictate to us what we teach with such hubris and arrogance. But what she's happy to do is to dictate to us what she will teach our children. Well, she can't trump parental rights over their children's education, and that's exactly what she's doing. And she's doing it with such contempt for the community.
The thing you mentioned about this is a Christian country and we have to do what they say. I think this sentiment, this very feeling, is still what's being pushed under the banner of secularism or Western liberal values, because the white Protestant Christian experience has morphed into today's secular liberal fashions and tastes are. They just, as a lot of thinkers point out, they say this is just today's modern manifestation of white Protestant Christian manifestation.
Right.
So when you see a ostensibly kind of a scary looking brown face with not that you're scary looking, but scary to someone who's absorbed all of these stereotypes with a beard and or a lady wearing a hijab or niqab saying, we don't want to teach our kids this, even though it might be closer to traditional Christian values, historical Christian values, because it goes against the fabric of today's the tastes and cultural norms favored by people in power today, or currents in power today. It's the same type of blasphemy. If you say, for example, I don't believe in LGBT as these discrete categories that you're teaching children, that's to them like somebody committing blasphemy or saying something heretical, because it goes against the fabric of.
It's a sort of supremacist attitude,
absolutely,
isn't it?
I think if you look historically at this country or the European nations, I think there was a time when, around about the 1600s, I forget the gentleman's name, the priest's name, he separated, kind of like looked at philosophically looking at Christianity, and at that point in time, basically he separated inadvertently the faith from the state, and basically he said, well, man runs this world.
Martin Luther,
man runs this world, so we have free will in this world, so we run the world through causality, so there's a cause and effect. So, we should explore that. And God runs the heaven, angels, and the next world. So that separation led to a separation of faith and state, and that continued for another 200 years. They dwelt around that, and eventually, basically, they evicted God from their dunyawi dealings, and the solution to that, kind of like through the, it worked very well, especially in the colonial period, starting around about that time as well. So they didn't look at other human beings as human beings.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there was all of that period, and then it was survival of the fittest, as around about the 1800s. So this kind of philosophy gradually gets rid of God from the equation and gradually gets rid of morality from the equation. And so what creeps in? So if you're getting rid of God, you're getting rid of faith, you're left with a godless society. Yeah. And so we have the two wars. Coming out of the two wars, basically today people identify, happily and readily as atheistic people. So there's this situation that we've lived with for a very long time, and it's generational atheism, where this, and if you basically stand for nothing, you have no moral basis or base to stand from.
An objective
basis. There's no that's led the individual. That's kind of like freed the individual. Now all the colonialism had brought all the wealth in, and upon that wealth was more wealth. And despite the United Nations agreements back in the 50s, we've found that there's been continuous aggression towards nations so that they remain suppressed. I mean, there's no denying that. So there's a little clip on YouTube. It says global wealth distribution. It's my favourite one. And if you look at that clip is a 4-minute clip. It just shows you the disparity of wealth. And so much wealth has rolled into these nations for decades now. There is so much food everywhere, nobody even has to work for it anymore. And so they were able to push individualism, and so that separated the family in the 70s and 80s. And at the same time, we've had the media explosion. So people could get their ideology out. So there's the sofa culture of watching television, and you're absorbing all of that. And this is, spanning out in my lifetime. I was born in 63, so there's a giveaway for my age, which is not an issue. But, it's spanning. So we used to watch Joe 90 with kind of like, not cartoon figures, the little plastic dolls that they would move about on the screen. So it was ridiculous. But look at the explosion in information, and much of that information has been used to indoctrinate people. Oh, have your individual lifestyle. Oh, yeah, we've got labour. China's voted to do all the slavery for the world. They build, they're making your trainers for £2. We'll sell you them for £200. China's making jeans for £2. You can buy them for £40, £50. And so it's driven this global slavery, this wealth, and the music industry and the film industry towards kind of like more and more immorality. And it used to be adultery. And then it's moved on to, the situation we're in now. And as if that's not enough, now they want to bring it into the classroom.
So at the centre of all of this, you're suggesting is the putting of the individual person's desires and whims and temporary gratification of pleasures as the kind of the God.
Well, what else is there to offer? Basically, I feel that the vision is that people in this country should just be consumers. Look, we've conquered the world 200 times over. Our £1 is equivalent to 180 rupees in Pakistan. Our £1 is equal to almost 100 rupees in India. These people are happy to work for us, sew for us, supply the cotton. There's so much wealth here. You've got the media to entertain yourselves. You can watch almost anything that you want. So the one thing they don't want society to look at is how much damage has been inflicted to the world out there. But subhanAllah, it's been Allah's blessing. They tax the air if they could. It's been Allah's blessing. He brings out the sun, He brings down the rain, He brings the wind, plants grow. So lots of nations have moved away from interacting with kind of like nations who are vicious. And so in and around this, we've had 2 wars, 2 good functional nations devastated in our lifetimes. At least 2, Iraq and Syria. One was by direct attack, and the second one was
proxy wars.
It was a proxy war. It was a supported proxy war. When the population they were given weapons, but when it was time for starvation and support wasn't to be given, there was no food that was dropped. So we've seen all of that. But so I feel that there is a feeling in these nations that we can do almost. The one thing we do not want is anybody looking at the history. So it's about dumbing down the population. Very narrow worldview.
But I think what for us, you see, my experiences here in both in Trojan Horse and in this current campaign that we're running, my experiences is that as individuals, all we can do is do the best that we can, behave in an honest manner. And what we decide to do should be done considering everyone. So, considering our community, considering the society the wider society. This campaign, I mean, even in Trojan Horse, for example, I was saying that this, one of the parents were saying to me that, this is a Christian country, we have to do what they say. We simply do not engage with the wider community sufficiently. This issue with LGBT teaching in our schools has started a debate, and I think that is a very good thing. Yeah. It's about time that we, as a community, did start dealing with controversial issues and did start engaging with the wider community and also engaging with the democratic process as well.
Some people have tried to demonize. Some people have tried to, spin this as some kind of.
But Salman, actually,
thing. But I think if the Muslim parents, Muslim community, this is a good example of just laboring on,
yes,
and becoming too loud for people to ignore. So eventually they have to accept Muslims have human status, and they should be consulted on certain things like adult human beings.
Well, yes, I mean, I've not experienced our community in Birmingham ever standing up and raising the voice in this manner. Well, protesting, and together. I've never experienced that in all my life, in fact.
Well, there was, I think...
and it's happening now, which is a good thing, I think.
I think I've been educated in this country. I went to a wonderful school. My teachers were absolutely fantastic. I've had a wonderful upbringing in this country as far as I'm concerned. I have a family, this security, this safety. Sad to say, so I'm not talking the country down. We've enjoyed in the wealth, be it wealth of perception or whichever way you look at it. So I feel I want to give something back to the country. I'd like to give something back. It's not about being silent. You need to give something back. And I think if we just stand our ground and say the Muslim community has got something to offer, parentage out there from the indigenous population, they don't have to swallow this whole. Look at us. We're standing up to this. Community standing up to this. We're sending out awareness, and I'm sure there's Middle England who resonate with what we're doing. It's just that we've got to put it out there where it's eloquent and it's beautiful and it's presented in a lovely way.
That's probably why you're not getting an opportunity to do that. Normally, just presenting you as some kind of bogeyman.
Yes. But having said that, I found that the more that I've interacted with the reporters, the more that they've appreciated what our campaign is about.
And individually they might be nice people, but because they don't make the editorial decisions.
No.
Like what music to put in the background of your.
No, you're right. For example, that program Newsnight that you're referring to, they did mention the proselytizing and promiscuity, which is something that I said that this is what we're afraid of.
I was listening to LBC today, for example, and it was really, really disingenuous. It was, the presenter James O'Brien. He got a clip of somebody arguing outside the school, and saying, God didn't create men for each other's pleasure. He created women for that purpose, for the pleasure of men. And in that context, it completely just took out that little clip saying, look, this Muslim guy, he believes women were just created for the pleasure of men. And he proceeded for an hour to just refute him and how misogynistic and how evil he is, and imagine what he's teaching his daughters and all that kind of stuff. So the individuals who might have been recording that in the first place might be a nice guy, but it's up to the person who's got the finger on the...
Becky... She's the Sky News reporter who actually recorded that report. That gentleman, in fact, said that both women and men have been created for each other's pleasure, right? But she only took the bit the first bit, and she didn't not know the rest of what he said.
Moving aside, he did actually say companionship.
And he did say companionship. Yeah, that's right. So it's very selective, and it is but you will get that bias, but what I have also found is that as a community that has always been vilified. we are, in this campaign, we have had our message come out to some degree, which is better than nothing. But I think this sort of engagement needs to continue. And
you're going to be, if you look at the kind of Black Power movements in the US in the last 50, 100 years, they, for the first many years, decades, they were just vilified. Whatever they were doing, they would, you remember Malcolm X's famous, rahimahullah, statement. The media, the newspapers will spin things to make the oppressor look like the oppressed and the oppressed look like the oppressor.
That's right.
And
we've experienced
same
that.
things happening here. You're arguing for your legal rights, but you're painted as some kind of aggressor, who's trying to change the system in some kind of insidious way. But what Maulana Sahib, you said about kind of Middle England and a lot of people, kind of agreeing with Muslims if they actually heard what you're saying, what you're calling for, not filtered through the kind of biased coverage, and some outright racist coverage, the go to Islamabad kind of coverage.
That's right,
but your genuine actual words, if they look at your own words, they will agree with you. And it's funny enough, someone was saying this morning that even a UKIP MEP, I don't know if that's good for your cause or not, but a UKIP MEP was ringing up the radio to, defend, to say, I stand by these Muslim parents who are, asking for this and that. Because it fundamentally, it speaks to the fitrah of even like a Christian parents and that.
All human beings, really,
I mean, the wonderful thing right now, we're doing it now, it's about the flow of information. I think we're in a great time. A very great time. It's a time where you don't have to watch television and get fed. You can search out whatever you want to watch on your phone through your WhatsApp groups. You can get information. Information can flow, and that's why I make dua for this organisation and such videos. People who do this work. So basically, we were sat there and we've been moaning for 3 months. And we've been getting these videos, and we've been getting these pictures, and we've had a library of about 1,000. If you go to the media, there's 500 pictures, documents, links. So we're kind of like the whole group is mega traumatized. There are people that speak, and there are other people mega traumatized but silent. Yeah. So what came of it is this little leaflet that these people had printed, and right at the bottom of it, like 2 millimeter letters, there's a telephone number. So I gave this telephone number a ring. Earlier to this, I went on the Alan Rock website and got in touch with one of the parents just to follow up what's happening in Parkfield, but I didn't know you, Amir.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't know you, so that was Javid. And I used to get some information from Javid, asking him not to fold. And then I got this little telephone number and I rang it. And Shaquille picked it up. And I said, I must congratulate you on your campaign, the work that you're doing, it's wonderful. Give it a good stance and don't buckle. And he said, why don't you come along and join us. So this is just a little bit for the radio listeners.
Is that how you came to Birmingham last week then?
Yeah, so
Shaquille would have been here, by the way, but unfortunately his kid wasn't well.
So
he's the lead campaigner at Anderson Park School.
Mashallah.
So Shaquille sent.
He's been receiving the brunt of the abuse online. I've been seeing.
He has Twitter and stuff.
He's put a massive bullseye on himself.
So we're all confused that this program is supposed to be rolled out in September 2020. Anyway, I jumped in the car, asked people if they wanted to join in. Yes, there was some yes and no, short notice, and I came along. And 2:15, we were invited. So I prayed Salah in a masjid in Birmingham. This is my experience, so just to tell you about it. So prayed Salah in a huge mosque on the left-hand side. There was some TV, a huge screen. We come from a little town, and this is 6-lane motorways through the city, so it's not like that I've not been through Birmingham before, but it was. I try not to get out of town. I like our little town.
It's not the Yorkshire Hills.
It's not the Yorkshire Hills, rolling hills.
Right.
No, not here. Not here. It's just communities upon communities upon communities. So run into Anderton Park, and then Shaquille's there, welcomes me. There's a small community. These hijabi ladies are there. There's some chanting through the microphone, and that's his way. That's his way of going about it.
That's right.
So so basically, the strategy that Shaquille had was that he could get some leaflets out. This leaflet here, asking parents not to send the children in. And he'd been putting them out a few days earlier as well.
Yeah.
So basically raising awareness that we're not getting anywhere with this headmistress at this school, and you need to withdraw your children. So there was an example of that at Parkfield, and 600 parents had withdrawn. And we were
600 children.
600 children, parents had withdrawn their child.
Yeah.
So we were really kind of like happy about them, you know. But up in the north, we're like, there's a wonderful group of people out there, you know. They stand for their rights. It's a cosmopolitan environment. You know, the parents are all charged. They're third, fourth generation in the UK, and that's the example we need to follow. Yeah. Little did I know that there had to be so much activism work to get them to get there. Yeah. So we've always held, you know, there's the example. If you want to look up to the Sahaba kind of people in the UK, it is Birmingham.
Well, I don't know, but that's a very high accolade, I think.
Yeah. So I suppose we came up, and then it was wonderful to see
some of the Southerners here saying, no, we can't have that. We've got to cut that part out.
So
you're basically saying Birmingham is like your London.
Oh, right, yeah. So, you know, they stand up for their rights. And to be fair, earlier on in the summer...
No, actually, you know, what Mawlana means, actually, is that, you know, when the Prophet's early difficulties and the persecution that he received, and the work that the Muslims did in the early years of Islam, you know, it was perseverant. They were the ones who were oppressed. The Quraysh had the upper hand, and it's the same here as well, in the sense that, you know, we in fact we are an oppressed community in Birmingham. There's a considerable degree of racism and Islamophobia, and you do have to, in fact, you know, what Abdullah is saying is that, you know, we've worked hard, and you do have to work hard. If you want to get your message out there, you want to bring people together. I mean, you know, for me, this campaign, it doesn't matter what happens, but if I find that my community is more aware of the issue, then my job is done. You know, I have brought something better to the community. I've made them aware of issues that concern them, and played my part in improving society.
Oh, we should have done this a bit earlier, but can you give some examples of what you're actually calling for specifically? Because how it's being portrayed is, you know, these Muslims are homophobic and they don't want to teach their kids about the existence of, you know, kids with two mums or two dads or whatever.
What we're saying is that, you know, we can live in a respectful and tolerant manner with despite having differences, despite having moral differences. Let us live our lives according to our morals, and the LGBT members can live their lives according to their morals. Do not we will not impose our morals on you. You do not impose your morals on us. That's quite simply, you know, what it is. But in terms of I know there has been a lot of misinformation in the media, but, you know, I don't think that we should dwell on that too much. Look, every community in Britain that, you know, shares our morals, it's a concern for them. And the way we have tackled it is you will find that, you know, you take Shakir, for example, Fatima and Maryam. These are young parents, and they're articulate. They've been born and raised here in Britain. They've had all their education here, and it's these mums and dads that are the ones that will actually make a difference. They're the ones.
They're the extremists.
Well, okay, in quotation marks, yeah. We are saying, we're asking, don't force your morals on us. Yeah. That's extremism. That's totalitarian attitude, and it's not us who are forcing anything on anybody else.
So it's very important to recognize that, because that doesn't come out that clearly when it's you know, it's clear for you what you obviously what your complaints are, because you're in the midst of it. But as somebody observing from outside, it's spun very, very 180 degrees the opposite direction. Like you guys are trying to impose your will on some school or whatever, when the law is in the normal. You know, you're right. You're just calling for your rights.
Well, you can see the prejudice,
and it's important to recognize. You know, one of the problems with, you know, with Muslims living in an area where people don't have generally an Islamic background and history, is we assume certain things that are for granted, and likewise they might take certain things for granted with us. It's very, very rare actually for Westerners in general, like Europeans and Americans, kind of call them natives or indigenous or whatever the politically correct term is. It's very odd and strange for them to generally, or very new, to have different views and ways of life, or even religions living together side by side. It's something we take for granted because right from the beginning, as you know, lakum dinukum waliya din, we have a way to articulate that two types of people can live together. But for the Western mindset, that even the concept of law, for example, is something that's to be imposed on everyone. Well, and it's impossible to have competing. I mean, for us, it's absolutely normal. You have two different systems of law sitting side by side next to each other. If you're a Jew, you go to the Jewish courts. If you're a Muslim, you go to the Islamic courts. And historically, but in a Western context, it's the cultural kind of landscape is a very monolithic one. Well, generally until recently.
Yeah, well, it is. There used to be the issue of the meaning of life. I mean, that's your philosophical position. How are you going to make sense of your existence in the earth? And Abrahamic faiths have had it good, very, very good. And the Islamic faith has it the very best, because our faith is preserved through the memorization of the Quran. It's still there and it's in practice. It gives us our family unit. It gives us our community spirit. It gives us our communities and shopping spirit, whatever we do together. It gives us our dress code. And it gives us, how we live day to day.
Your values.
And that's basically your values. So basically, once that question is not important, the meaning of life for a community, so they're looking at someone completely different from themselves. You're approaching life from two different worldviews.
Yeah.
One worldview is, I'd say objective, because we have the dunya as an objective viewpoint and Allah as the creator of it. Mm-hmm. So you have a creator that you're answerable to. It's not subjective about how I feel about that or what I'm going to do, but that's my starting point. God made the world. God made these clouds. God made these trees. He used causality. He uses causality. That's what gives us our free will. But that's how a child is brought up. Allah made this. Allah made that. Allah made this. And despite thousands of scientific discoveries, on the other side, we very often have school teachers or science, and it will be a subjective viewpoint. God will never be mentioned. So, say for example, I'm going to make a scientific example. I think you'll find it reasonably easy to follow. Say for example, you have the letter I. It's a straight line. You put two I's together, and it can make an L. You put three together, and it makes an M. You flip the M, and it makes a W. So we're assigning meaning to a simple straight line. We're assigning a meaning. Mm-hmm. So when that comes out in chemistry, for example, that you have an atomic number, and it's 1, and then you put two hydrogens together, and it becomes helium, and you put 3 together, and it becomes lithium. So this is the periodic table. That's the same as the example of the I and the L and the M and the W. Mm-hmm. They're just increase from the first increment. So that's clearly a language of materialism. Those meanings to those chemicals, everything's made out of hydrogen, but yet they have different properties. Those properties are assigned by God. But never in the chemistry lesson will a teacher look at it like that. It's like, it's just incidental that it has a property. Lithium has got three, basically three, the weight of 3. Yeah, three. But what is it? It's a metal. So those meanings are assigned by God. So basically what I'm saying is that we look at the world as if it's designed, and the opposing community, basically the atheistic community, approaches it from it's just incidental. It's not really that important.
But the thing is, I think that's what their claim is.
Yeah.
Because when somebody claims to approach something without or by ignoring Creator or God, they're just bringing other presumptions and either social constructs in this case, or societal fashions and norms and so forth, and just taking them for granted instead of critically looking at them.
Yeah.
So what happens is, for example, what's happening now is Muslims are a Muslim student in class. He or she has their kind of worldview that the purpose of life and so on and so forth. But the teacher who might be an atheist or something like this, they might think they're being neutral in ignoring or not favoring one religion over another. But what in fact they're doing is just bringing their own subjective viewpoints,
exactly.
Cultural tastes and cultural norms, and cementing that as the neutral, as the zero starting point.
You can say secularism is a religion.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why a lot of people say it's just a modern iteration of Protestantism rather than general. But yeah, so
well,
just before we actually before the program ends, can I just say that as far as this campaign is concerned, and what we're asking parents to do is that I think every school should have a parent body.
Yeah.
Parents should be active in terms of finding out what their children are being taught, especially on this sex and relationship education and on LGBT teaching, and they should engage with the school, and they should have no hesitation after exhausting efforts in terms of engaging with the school and trying to convey their concerns to them. They should have no hesitation in taking action.
Yeah.
Because
Very
quite
good
honestly,
advice.
we as a community, we are not politically represented. Our councillors and our MPs do not represent our perspective. We have 24 councillors in Birmingham. None of them have said anything on this, except one councillor, Mohammed Idris, who spoke in favour of the parents at Parkfield School, but was then silenced by the Labour whip and threatened to be kicked out of the party unless he apologised. So we are in fact without a voice. Unless you raise your own voice, then your rights and your values and your morals are just going to be trampled over. And that is one, if this campaign can get that message out to people that, look, it's up to you to safeguard your children's morality. It's up to you to claim your rights under law. Because
don't just think somebody's going to come along and save you.
He's going to do it. They're not going to do it.
Up and work
and as people, as Muslims, as people of Iman, actually, it's our duty to take that step. When you see something, some injustice taking place, you must react to it. You must deal with it. You must speak out on it, and you must move towards physically take action to try and rectify it. And for so many years and decades, we as a community have not been doing that, and I think it is time, and I think we do now have a generation of people in our community now, young mums and dads, who have been raised and educated in this country, who are articulate, who can do it,
and they feel confident. They don't have that mentality.
That's right.
I have to obey what the Christian says.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that.
Well, not quite the Christian.
What they understand. Yeah.
Well, no. I mean, he's referring to the like the parents do say at the school gate that, look, it's the law, we have to do it. And in a similar fashion as if they don't have any rights here.
Yeah.
But you take Fatima, for example, the young mum who came out and said, look, if you're not going to listen to me, I don't want you teaching my child that it's okay to be gay. I'm going to go to the papers. And she phoned Birmingham Mail and gave a story to them, and it became national news. Now, that took some courage. But Fatima was able to do that because she's a young mum. She's born and raised here. She felt that she belongs here. This is her country, and she has rights here. And that is what gave her the strength to come out and say that. I have not found another mum like Fatima, in fact, in all my dealings with the many schools that I've campaigned at.
So if some young mums and dads who feel confidently Muslim and confidently that they belong here, if they're listening, how can they get involved and maybe give them some practical advice? How can they?
So basically, the organisation is called the National Parents Forum on RSE. I took the opportunity to say that to Sky News as well when I turned up on Friday. Basically, our point of argument is that for primary schools, there is no obligation to teach any of this.
Yeah.
So Damien Hill says, for example, I'll quote him, "We expect secondary schools to include LGBT content." That's just an expectation, by the way.
Yeah.
Damien Hines.
Hines, yeah. And then it continues, that's a Yorkshire accent. Yeah.
Sorry. Okay.
Thank you. And then it continues, "Primary schools are enabled and encouraged to cover LGBT content if they consider it age appropriate to do so." Yeah. So we inferred from that there is no obligation to teach it. So but the veto lies with the headmaster, not with the parents. So that's very, very rude. Yeah. So, but anyway, if a headmaster doesn't want the headache at his doorstep, a headmaster, headmistress, they just don't need to teach it. Because this is a loophole in the law for primary schools.
It still feels like maybe giving a short-term bandage.
It's immoral for the head teacher to teach something that the parents are not approving of.
Yeah,
they do have a right over their children's education, and although parents don't have a veto, right? But the school is run by the head teacher, which is fair enough. But you can't ignore parents' wishes.
Exactly.
That's just immoral of him to do that.
Well, that's what's happening in Birmingham, and what's been wonderful for our community back in Yorkshire and throughout the country is that there is a staunch fight being put up in Birmingham, and we've seen that now. We don't need, but that fight that you're doing there. Head teachers up and down the country are looking at that. And you took this from our leaflet, I do know that, and you've put it on your leaflet that there's no obligation.
Yes,
well, your headmistress picked that up and contacted Damien Hines, and she said, take this, basically she was saying, take the loophole out, give us direct instruction. So the lobby is very, very strong.
So she can be big brother over our children.
Well done, So, but no, it's not going to happen. So what we're doing is, we've got a parent pack coming out.
So what's the name of this organisation again?
So it's called the National Parents Forum on RSE.
National Parents Forum on RSE.
We've got some telephone numbers where parents can join.
We'll put some links in the
do put some links in, and there's a kind of like a mums only group where they can chat and share information, and mums are managing that. Then there's a general group that everybody's on, and then there's an information only group where you don't listen to any chat but you get the information. And it takes quite some time to get to seep in exactly what's happening, and when it finally clicks with you, it's going to be quite shocking, and you'll want to become an activist. What we're doing now is, in conjunction with Birmingham, we're going to print 50,000 of these as a first print, hopefully printing another 50,000, reaching out to the Madaris and Makatib and saying, can you get these out to the parents?
It's very good what Abdullah's done, actually, and I'll tell you why he's been able to do that. It's because they've had time. Whilst we've been at the school gate and we've been running around, right? They've been sitting there in their WhatsApp group, right? And it's very good. It's very good. And I will be using his material. So when people have this material, the hard work is at the school gate. Standing at the school gate, lobbying parents, making them aware of what's happening in the school, and doing that, consistently. Because that is what makes the difference. When you're at the gate and parents see you on a daily basis, they begin to have more confidence in you. They start engaging with you.
Yes, that's had to happen in Birmingham. In our areas, the programme hasn't been rolled out. People have asked, and it's like very, very watered down. So there's nothing to protest about just yet. But the vision that the LGBT community have and the government have is already there. So in the first instance, what will happen is it will be very watered down so that it can be set up in our communities over 5 years. But that's not going to happen either.
Abdullah, are you sure about that?
It's the schools and schools. We've got a difficult school there.
You have to bear in mind, the parents in Birmingham didn't know about this.
Yeah.
It had been going on for years. So, I'm not entirely sure that it's all in every school. It's watered down up north. I mean, Manchester, they have found that it's not so watered down, and there are issues.
So because we're such a kind of like a tight-knit community, it's parents have gone in and asked, from our groups, so we've made the initial inquiries, and you get the feedback that no, it's not like that. If you give them some pictures of books, we haven't got those books, or they're not in our libraries. So we're going to get that. The point I'd like to make to the listeners is that they're not going to give you the book straight away. You're going to have to demand them.
Yes.
And you're going to have to demand not one book, but the full lesson plans for the whole year. What exactly are you doing with RSE post 2020? Are you teaching it now? Can I see exactly what you're going to have to demand it? They're not going to be forthcoming in giving you it. They're going to try to fob parents off. So it's not just like you can go to school and it's going to be willy-nilly and easy. It's something difficult.
You've got to make an effort and do some research.
And so to that end,
for your child's sake.
To that end, I'd just like to say before the programme ends, is we've decided to have a number of conferences.
Yes.
We don't like parents to travel far. They've got children who've got responsibilities. So we're going to hold conferences in Birmingham. We're starting with Birmingham because this is where it's all kicked off. And then we'll have an awareness, a launch conference in our area, that's Yorkshire, West Yorkshire. Then there'll be something in Manchester, hopefully, in liaison with the people in Manchester, where the Muslim gay cabaret went in,
Right.
And that's where it kicked off in Manchester,
That's Al-Qidaya you're referring to.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what the Muslim gay group call themselves,
And then possibly one in Blackburn, so we have our contacts in Blackburn, and there'll be something in that area, Blackburn.
Right.
So so this is what we're doing.
So can I just say on that as well that we've got a protest taking place on Friday. We will welcome anybody from around UK to come and join us. If you are concerned, 24th. That's right. It's after Jummah, the protest at 2:30. Outside Anderton Park School.
They'd already said, I came and they said I'd instigated it. So
you got all the credit for the hard work.
Well,
after it had been taking place for 2 months, and he's got the credit for it.
So I must be very powerful if I
is the longest.
So I didn't even deny it, and I didn't say yes or no. I just felt the power for the moment. But we hope to come up actually.
Okay.
Despite them saying that these are people from the other areas.
Well, another thing that people could also attend is there's a gay pride march this coming Saturday in Birmingham, right? And it's being led by Andrew Moffat. Now, there have been regular gay pride marches in Birmingham, but we've never sort of attempted to do anything there. But they've deliberately put Andrew Moffat at the front of this gay pride march, and they know that he's a controversial figure, and that the community in Birmingham does have an issue with him and what
these
the program's running.
campaigners are clearly taking sides then.
I will be there at the gay pride march, protesting. And I invite anyone else who wishes to come. We will be having a peaceful protest. So bear in mind, incidentally, all our literature says that we do not accept any homophobic behavior in our campaign, and we do not accept any homophobic behavior from any of our supporters. They are not our supporters if they behave in that manner. So this protest on Saturday, when the gay pride march is taking place, it will also be a peaceful protest. It will not be a homophobic protest, but we will be making our point that we do not agree with such teaching in schools to children who don't share their moral position.
I'd just like to say that the allegations about this work are that you're homophobic. Well, the Muslim population has been here for decades now. And homosexuality has been here for decades. When have we spoken against it? We've only spoken against it when it's been brought into primary schools and secondary schools at almost 100% Muslim attendance. That's when we've stood up.
Well, Abdullah, take for example Andrew Moffat. He's been in a Parkfield school for many years, and he's been treated with just as much respect as any other teacher at that school. The only thing that changed earlier this year is that parents discovered what he was teaching their children. And he was hiding it from them.
I can imagine now.
So we are if we were homophobic, Andrew Moffat would have received homophobic behavior towards him in the last several years that he's been there.
Well, that's a very important point. Okay, I'd like to continue the discussion, but I'm wary of Maghrib coming near.
All right, Jazakallah khair.
Jazakallah khair.
Thank you very much.
Amir and Maulana Abdullah. Jazakallah khair, brothers and sisters and friends, for watching at home. If you liked the conversation, give it a like and share. If you didn't, then give it a like and share anyway, and let us know your opinions in the comments below. Maybe in the future, inshallah, we'll have you guys again on the podcast. And yeah,
Inshallah.
جزاكم الله خيرا سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك واشهد ان لا اله الا انت واستغفرك واتوب اليك والسلام عليكم ورحمه الله وبركاته. Unscripted.